starting to realise they've made a mistake, that the Treasury is driving this.
If the police decide to issue me with a fixed penalty notice, I would, of course, do the right thing and step.
Farmers! No farmers! No
British farmers, our agriculture, our food supply, our food security, and shame on them.
Like the changes that we've made, I say the door is open and you can leave.
The UK is going crazy because Jeremy Clarkson told a shocking secret about Keir Starmer on live TV. Keir Starmer is the leader of the Labour Party and the leader of the opposition in the UK. He is used to being under political pressure. In the past few days, though, things have become very hot. Something that asks for a general election has spread like flames. Over 2.7 million people signed it in just 24 hours, and the number is still going up. It's clear that a lot of people are unhappy with Starmer's leadership. Things get even more interesting now. The political former star of Top Gear, Jeremy Clarkson, has backed the cause with all his might. People really listen to Clarkson's words, especially in rural areas. Clarkson knows directly what problems government policies can cause because he is a farmer himself. People pay attention when he talks out. But what's so important about Clarkson's part? To see why, we need to look at how the gap between the Labour government and the rural areas they say they serve is rising. To begin, let us look at the motion. It's more than just a trend on the internet. It's a strong sign of how unhappy people are. Millions of people are signing it to show their anger at what they see as broken promises and bad leadership from the Labour government. It's even more surprising how quickly it caught on. It quickly became one of the biggest protests the UK has ever seen in just a few hours. Well-known people like Elon Musk have said things about it, which has increased its impact even more. Even though there is a lot of support, big UK news sources like the BBC have been surprisingly quiet. People are more angry than ever because of this lack of coverage, which makes the protest a sign of how disconnected people feel from the government and the media. Jeremy Clarkson isn't just involved in this problem because he's mad about something personal. He speaks for a much larger group of people, farmers and people who live in rural areas who feel like the Labour government has abandoned them. Jeremy hasn't been having a good time lately. He had to give up his favourite foods like pork pies and pints because of a recent health scare. He slipped a disc just as he was getting used to being sober and eating a lot of vegetables. Clarkson didn't give up, even though his body was yelling at him to rest. Why? His diddly squat farm in Oxford, which is now famous thanks to the hit Amazon show Clarkson's Farm, gave him a unique view of the problems farms face. And Clarkson isn't the type to do nothing while the government makes life harder in the country. Even though it was freezing at 3 a.m. and Clarkson was on a mix of drugs, he joined farmers in London for the Tractor Tax March. The protest was in response to policies such as farming inheritance taxes and the shifting of subsidies, which many say are putting family farms in danger of going out of business. Clarkson isn't just there to march in quiet, though. His main aim is Keir Starmer, and he has a lot to say. From April 2026 on, Chancellor Rachel Reeves's plan calls for a 20% tax on farm and business assets worth more than £1 million. Small farms are still protected, but Clarkson says the policy doesn't take into account how close most farmers' profit margins are. For him, it's not just a tax, it's a threat to the very existence of family farms all over Britain. Clarkson made it clear that the people in charge of Labour, especially Keir Starmer, don't understand what farming is really like. He doesn't even eat meat, he said. Terrible people. No one knows the first thing about farming. Making meat isn't just a job for farms, it's their way of life. It's an important part of life in rural areas, for everything from keeping animals alive to taking care of farming land. It's not a surprise that farmers like Clarkson feel forgotten when Starmer's policies seem to ignore these customs, or even worse, put them at risk of dying out. Clarkson makes a strong point. These planned taxes would do more than just cut into income. They could destroy whole ways of life. Think about getting a farm that has been in your family for generations and having to sell it to pay the taxes. Clarkson wasn't afraid to say bad things about Starmer. He called him a nightmare for farmers and said that places like Kentish Town juice bars, which are part of Labour's urban bubble, have nothing to do with rural Britain. Yes, I know. People joke around about the National Pig Awards in the juice bars in Kentish Town where Keir Starmer lives. In other parts of the country, though, people like bacon sandwiches, which are made by pig farms. The jab from Clarkson hit home. It wasn't just about meat. It was also about how leaders don't seem to understand what life is like in the country. He also talked about what he calls a broken model in farming. Farmers have to sell their goods for less than what it costs them to make them, but they have to pay the same taxes as businesses that make more money. I can only think of one job where you buy everything in bulk and then sell it at retail. No one else does it. His point of view is straightforward. These tax debates wouldn't be needed if farmers could sell food for what it really costs them to make. On the other hand, farmers are in a tough spot because prices are kept intentionally low to please customers. Clarkson didn't just say bad things, he suggested a way to fix things. He is trying to get rid of all inheritance taxes on farms. Yes, he says, this would be a tax break in reality, but it's necessary to keep farming going in Britain. Farmers can't be told, sell it for less than it costs. Oh, and by the way, you pay the same taxes as everyone else. It's clear that's crazy. But Clarkson's complaints aren't just about farms. He has said that he is worried about Starmer's leadership in general, saying that it lacks strategy and direction. Many people agree with this and think that Starmer's main goal is to keep up looks rather than deal with the real problems the UK is facing. Clarkson's comparison of Starmer's approval rating to Nigel Farage's was one of the most shocking things he said. It suggested that Starmer's popularity is falling at a frightening rate. A lot of people who feel the same way have responded to this kind of direct, no-nonsense criticism. No longer is it just about farming. There is a growing sense that the government is not aware of the problems that people face every day. It's becoming clear that this isn't just a rural problem as the protest grows. It's being signed by people from all walks of life who are all angry at the Labour government. A lot of people have heard about it thanks to social media. Hashtags calling for Starmer to step down are rising, and images of protests are going viral. This internet movement gives people a way to say what's on their minds, and it's clear they want things to change. It's interesting that Clarkson has made it clear that he has no plans to run for office himself, even though he has strong views. I would rather throw rocks at people than have them throw rocks at me, he told The Times. Keir Starmer, on the other hand, ignored Clarkson's harsh criticism while speaking from Brazil, where he was at an international meeting. Starmer said, "The facts speak for themselves," when asked about Clarkson's comments. He supported the Labour government's plan for an estate tax, saying that most British farms would not be affected by the changes. He said that most farming families will not be harmed because of the exemptions and benefits that are already in place. It's a £3 million threshold for a normal family that wants to pass on a farm through the family with all the allowances in place, Starmer said. He also said that the 20% tax rate being considered is a lot less than the normal 40% estate tax rate. He also said those who are affected will only pay half of the inheritance tax that other people pay. But Starmer's words didn't address the more important issues that Clarkson and the farmers marching in Whitehall brought up. Farmers disagree with Starmer's view that the changes are fair and easy to handle. A lot of people think that the £1 million limit is excessive and not related to the real world of farming. It's easy for farms, equipment and animals to be worth more than that, especially in places where land is expensive. Small and medium-sized family farms may still have to make tough decisions because of the new tax, such as selling off parts of their land to pay it. Clarkson and the farmers say that Starmer's promises don't take into account how rough farming is economically, since small gains are usually put back into the land. People think that Labour doesn't care about the problems in rural areas because Starmer said how farmers then arrange their affairs within their family is a matter for them. Farmers thought this was rude, as if their problems with complicated tax rules and financial stress were just a matter of getting things done. Clarkson in particular has said that this kind of talk shows that the people in charge don't understand how farming really works. It has been said that they do not understand what farming is. It's not just about the numbers on a spreadsheet, it's about people, their past and their future. The way Starmer has handled the estate tax issue has caused more than just protests. It's starting a political firestorm. More than 2.7 million people have signed the petition for a general election. This is partly because people in rural areas are angry, and people like Clarkson are speaking out for them. Once strong because people were hopeful about change, Labour's situation is now weakening because of more and more criticism. People are looking more closely than ever at the party's policies, especially those that deal with problems that touch rural Britain. What will happen next is the big question right now. If the petition keeps getting support, it might make Labour look at its leadership again. If Starmer wants to win back the public's trust, he might have to face these worries head on. It won't be easy to rebuild trust, though. Clarkson and others have brought up important problems that go deep and touch on deep worries about the direction of the country. Will Starmer be able to fix things, or is this the start of a big change in politics? Time will tell. The petition, Jeremy Clarkson's strong words, and the rising anger in the public are all parts of a much bigger story. It's about people who speak out and ask for change. What do you think? Does this mean something different for Starmer and the Labour Party, or does it just mean the start of bigger problems?